So just while I'm waiting for a couple of more people to join, I'll introduce myself and say a little bit about St. Andrews Innovation and the Entrepreneurship Center. I'm Bonnie Hacking, and I'm program manager here in the Entrepreneurship Center. The Entrepreneurship Center opened in 2021 as part of St. Andrews Innovation. And our aim in St. Andrews Innovation is really to turn the world-leading research, the fantastic ideas that both people who are staff and people who are students and alumni here at the university have, into some kind of practical, tangible social enterprise, business, startup, spin-out. You can choose a bunch of different words for that. And that's really what we're all about. And so in the Entrepreneurship Center, we support people, we train people, we work with people, we provide coaching and mentoring, and we have a lot of different programs and competitions and things going on. And I'll say a little bit more about the detail of that when we come towards the end of the session. But I'm delighted to have Carina Kohli here. And for those of you that weren't here a few minutes ago, Carina was sat in my classroom 10 years ago in 2024 when I was teaching a module in enterprise and creativity in the School of Management. Carina graduated in 2017 with a degree in management, and she's been working on her own business, Humm Care. And so I'll hand over to Carina and get started. And if anyone has questions as we go through, you're welcome to pop them into chat. We'll leave the questions till the end if that's okay, once Carina's finished speaking, and then you're welcome to unmute or pop things into chat, whichever's more comfortable. So Carina, over to you.
Amazing. Thanks for that, Bonnie. And before I bring up my deck, I thought it would be nice to maybe just tell you a little bit about myself, and then I'm going to also tell you about our journey building the company and how I meandered onto this path. So like Bonnie said, shockingly, I was in her class 10 years ago, and it's very strange to realize that number, because for me, I remember all of my memories at St. Andrews so clearly. For me, entrepreneurship has actually always been in my blood. It's something that I think I've always kind of had that builder mentality, and more on that. I'm going to get a little bit deeper into that. But for me, I studied management at St. Andrews, and I actually did not apply with management, but I'm going to dive a little deeper into what happened and how I found my way onto that path. And after college, how I got to building my startup, why I was doing it, from being, this beta web application platform, then figuring out a business model, essentially trying to figure out how to make money with an idea and a startup, and then navigating bootstrap financing for, I would say, about 3.5 years. And then finally, we raised some money last year, and we raised our seed round. So it's definitely been a busy time. While I will talk about financing, I actually wanted to kind of have an all-round approach to this session, especially because I feel like when I started this company back in 2020, it was my first enterprise, but I don't think anyone told me a lot of these things when I started. And for me, I do think financing is really important, but it's equally important to a lot of other things you need to consider while building a company. So with that, I'm actually just going to bring up my deck and just talk to you for a little bit. I will ask some questions, and I would love you guys to engage. I was thinking that I'm going to spend, about 25-30 minutes on this deck, but we can spend the latter part of the session on answering your questions, because that's way more effective and relevant. So let me know if you can see my slide right about now. Yes, great. Got you. I'm just minimizing the screen. So my journey at St. Andrews, as you see this photo down here, this was exactly 12 years ago, and this was day one of being at this very special, I would say, magical town. But I would like to actually tell you a little bit about myself before college. So while now I, have got my hands in every single department, I'm, focused in accounting and in financing, because you have to be when you run a business. For me, school and academics, I wouldn't say academics were ever my forte, very honestly. For me, I've always viewed school, college as much more than just studies. To me, when I was in school, I don't think I actually studied until I had to, which in that means that I only actually started putting my effort into doing well in school, probably in the 10th grade, when I knew I had to do well, sit for the national exams. I wanted to go to a great college. For me, I was always kind of this out of the box creative thinker, which is why, Bonnie, I did take your class. But I viewed the world a little bit, I would say, just in my own magical, fantasy, dreamy way. A funny example for this is when we were applying to school, when I was about 6 or 7 years old. I was with a few of my friends who are actually still my closest friends, and we had this admissions exam in school where they asked us to color a carrot as a 6-year-old. And all of my friends, when our parents were outside school, they were asked, like, what color did you color this carrot? What color? And everyone was orange, orangish yellow, orangey red. And when my parents asked me what color I colored it, I was like, blue. And to my parents' despair, because they were certain that I wasn't going to get into school, they were like, why would you do that? And I turned around and I said, everyone knows that a carrot is orange. It's fun to think about things in a different way and do something different. And that's kind of been how I've looked at school and university. I came to university in 2013. I actually applied with economics and psychology. For me, people are my forte. I love relationships. I love learning about people, and I thrive on connection, which again does tie into entrepreneurship, and I'll dive into that a little bit deeper. For me, I've loved psychology. I studied it in school in my last 2 years, and I actually studied at that time. Um, but what I also realized is that I was a very sensitive person, and I usually take my problems home with me. And I do that today at work as well, which isn't the healthiest approach, but it's something that you tend to do when you really care about something. So while I was at St. Andrews, I moved into just trying different things. Economics was, full of a lot of math. And I don't think that that was something that I was really wanting to do at that time. Psychology, I felt was it was just something that I was not able to detach from when we were studying different things and cases. And I don't think I would make a very good therapist because I would be too attached to every case that was brought to my table. But management was something that I have grown up with in my household. Both my parents are entrepreneurs. So from being, a young child, being 10, 11, 12, going to office with my parents, trying to learn a little bit, whether it's sitting on the typewriter, whether it's sitting with someone else, it's always been something that's been in my bones, I would say, and in my blood. Came to the management school, and instantly, I think what drew me to a lot of the classes were entrepreneurship, understanding behavior and consumer behavior. Because when you actually think about building a business, the heart and soul of a business is its team and its customers. And the common thing between both of those things are people. And funnily so, of course, we have to study accounting, and St. Andrews did not do well in that. It took topics in finance, did not do well in that either. But I think something that I really, really thrived in was the creative part and building something, coming up with an idea, but the execution. And I realized that's something that I really enjoyed doing. After university, I remember I wanted to study in London. That was the year that Brexit happened, and it definitely was not something that seemed accessible to me at that time. I went back home. I worked at a family friend's business for a while, a large, company in the manufacturing industry. And COVID happened. A few months before COVID, I actually joined my father's business to just understand more about what he was doing, see where I could help and use my skills from college. But COVID happened, and for the first 8 months in India, we were 100% in lockdown. At that time, I'm also not one of those people who can just be a busybody and, not be a busybody. And for me, I wanted to do something. And that actually brought me to Baby Space, what you see right here. This is actually one of the first photos I took of our web application, having 6 users back in 2020. To tell you a little bit about how I got to this stage. I am 30 right now, but I had PCOS and still have it. And I was diagnosed with this disorder when I was 13. And I was essentially very lost. I really, really struggled with my health for over a decade. And I just remember living in Mumbai, living in, a tier 1 city in our country, an urban metropolitan city where we have access to great doctors. Why was I struggling and why was I put on the wrong medication? Why was I so lost? And I remember having this feeling stuck with me. I never thought I would find myself in healthcare, but I knew that feeling this way, I knew that I wanted no other woman and person to feel this way, starting in India. So actually, while I was working at this family friend's business, I conducted a study and I spoke to about 1,000 women before I realized that this was a problem I could and wanted to solve for. And I am going to get into the research part of it and the importance of developing your own research. But cut to 2020, we launched this web application, this very embarrassing platform now to look at because it was very, very much in beta. But we were called Baby Space at the time. This was a platform we put out during COVID for, people to engage with and also get answers to questions, talk to doctors, because they were completely inaccessible to most people in our country at the time. This platform actually grew from these 6 users, which were probably all my family members back in 2020. It grew to about 16,000 people in 2 months. And that was my first moment where, without any marketing, without anything, that was the first moment where it got me sitting up to think, being like, clearly there's something that people need and there's something that people want. Cut to today. This photo and this news article is from 6 months ago. We now are a health tech platform called Humm Care. Hum means us in Hindi, and that's our national language. We wanted it to be inclusive to everyone, and we want healthcare to make everyone feel less alone in a very lonely journey, which is what we tend to feel when we're struggling. We really, really took our time to raise funding. Where we are today, we now are a health tech company. We are in over 25 companies in India and globally, from Fortune 500 companies to the Big Four in consulting. But it's something we stayed consistent at, and we built over 4.5 to 5 years. I'm going to actually dive a little bit deeper into starting up. I'm sure all of you have heard of Y Combinator. It was definitely something that I wanted to get into, and I got rejected from 4 times, just putting that out there. But 3 really important questions that they ask in their application, and these are 3 questions that I actually like to revisit twice a year and just think about what we're doing as a company and in context of a solution. So the first, what are you looking to solve, right? Every single company today is looking to solve something. Is it a big enough problem that people are going to want to pay for a solution for? How many people are facing this problem? Is it a must-have or is it a nice-to-have? I remember when we had this Baby Space platform back in 2020, I thought I was ready to speak to the big investors, and something, and I can't name the investor, but definitely, a tier 1 category of investor. I remember she said to me, she said, be a painkiller and not a vitamin. And that's something that I I actually love to just keep retelling myself every time we're building out a new product or every time we're trying to launch something within the company. But you have to remember that the problem you're trying to solve has to be a must-have. And it has to be so important that people are willing to trust you, find you, and then pay for what you have to offer. Second question, why is it you who's going to solve this? And I love this question because it actually makes you think a little bit deeper. Everyone has ideas. I actually have a notebook called Carina's Book of Ideas, and it's something that I keep, and it's something that I've had for a very long time, from recruitment business ideas to a travel business idea to a food company and a food brand that I wanted to launch. It's ideas are aplenty. But why is this the problem that you are particularly going to solve? And why do you think you can do it? And this is something that I repeatedly ask myself because there's always going to be competition, right? Every single investor, every single person is going to turn around and say, oh, who are your competitors? Who else is doing this? And the second you think you're the only one, you're definitely wrong. And I remember this was something that I realized early days when I thought I was the only one solving for this in our country, and very, very wrong at that. But why is it you that who can solve this? What kind of skills do you have? What do you bring to the table? Are you a technical person? Are you a creative person? Are you a salesperson? Even if you aren't a salesperson, you definitely have to be when you're building a company because your number one job is selling it. Are you someone who is a people's person? What makes you the leader of this company? And who else do you need to bring this into fruition and to execute this? And the last one, how are you going to make this happen, right? So you've thought about this problem and the solution for this problem. You've figured out why it's going to be you and what you have that no one else does that's going to build this successfully. But how are you doing it? Are you solving it as a tech company? Are you building this as a service? Are you trying to launch and manufacture a product? Is it a patented product? Are you doing it alone? Are you doing this with a group of other people? These are all the things you need to think about before you actually launch. Another part of this, I think, that you have to consider is the kind of startup you want to build, right? So is it a company that's going to be a small business that you don't need to raise funding for? Is it a startup that you definitely need to raise funding for? Is it a nonprofit? Is it definitely a for-profit? And based on that, even before you launch this company, you need to incorporate the company. And that's definitely something you need to think about very clearly because there are very specific types of companies that get accepted for grants. There are very specific companies that get accepted by VCs to invest as well. And the last part where I've just written, can you do it? I think this is something I will get into when I talk about the things we need to combat as founders. But the question is, can you actually do it, right? Everyone wonders, can you actually solve for this? And the true answer is, you never know where it's going to end up, right? No one knows what's going to happen in 5 years or in 2 years even, or 10 years. But can you get far enough to make something happen for your business? You absolutely can, but you really, really have to try. The research matters. So I don't think I realized how important research and building, evidence to launch a product was until I actually started talking to people. Like I mentioned earlier, I ended up speaking to 1,000 people before launching Humm, 1,000 women specifically to understand their pain points. What are the problems they're looking to solve for? What are they looking to pay for? How much would they pay for it? If we just look at the divide of the kind of research that I would say is impactful to get the data you need, if we look at surveys being 100%, you need to look at focus groups being hopefully closer to a 30% of the number of people you've asked to fill your survey. And then you need to conduct one-on-one interviews. And what you get from this is, of course, with the surveys, you get population data, right? And you get the graphs and the pie charts that you really need to build a case and build that evidence that you're looking for. But focus groups, interestingly so, I have found to be the most impactful way of collecting data. And by this, I mean, you get a group of people. I'm sure most of you already know what a focus group is, but what you get from a focus group that you don't get from a one-on-one interview is perspective and multiple opinions. And by this, I would say your whole focus when you're conducting your research should be getting enough people in your focus group to get you different opinions and perspective, because other people like, and they also feel that other people can validate their opinion and they feel comfortable enough to share more. The next part, I would say interviews, 5 to 10% of your survey, sample size, I would say you should try to get one-on-one interviews. This is definitely very time consuming. And it's something that is exhaustive as well. But this gets you the details. And this gets you the details that people were not willing to share in the focus group. It gets you the details that you will never get from a survey, and it gets you the depth of knowledge that you need, whether it is some cultural influences, whether it's societal influences, whether it's situational influences of how the person sees the problem and the solution. This is something you should definitely spend a lot of time on. Also, just a little caveat here, you don't have to do all of this before you launch your product. You just have to do some of it. You can also keep doing it. So at Humm, we actually try to do 2 surveys a year, and we try to do a different subset of focus groups and interviews from our users a year as well, because it just keeps us alive and it keeps us aware of what people want and need all the time. If you don't have enough time to do all of it, try to do some of it and try to get enough information, because as an individual, when we're looking at a problem or a solution, we would never know the full picture. And it's very important to know from a potential customer what they really need. What we need to combat. So very honestly, this is not just when you're starting up, this is every day when you're building a company. And I wanted to just spend a little bit of time on the behind the scenes part of being an entrepreneur, being a founder, building a company. We don't have a co-founder at Humm. I don't have a co-founder. So when you're a solo founder, it's definitely a lonelier experience. When you're a founder, it's very lonely. But when you're a solo founder, I would say it's to times 3 your experience as a team of founders. There are a few things you need to kind of combat on a day-to-day basis. So number one, I would say the biggest one, and something that I think just plays on everyone's mind is imposter syndrome. This is something that I think I experience, and every single other person building a company or working towards their dream feels, just not feeling like it's happening, not feeling like you're good enough, not feeling like you're doing it right. Even when it happens, you're constantly doubting, saying, oh my God, but it's not good or it's not right. This is something that you actually feel a lot more before you see any validation of your business. So before you make any money, before your company is recognizable, before you see consumer validation, before you have people that understand what you're doing. And with time, that does decrease. But the beginning is the loneliest part, because you're sitting in this room, no one knows what the hell you're up to, sitting on a computer. It's a very lonely, isolating experience. And you're essentially trying to combat the voice in your head saying, why are you not trying to get another job, or why are you not doing that? So if you believe in this and if you really think it's going to work, you need to talk yourself out of not feeling good enough. And even on the days that you feel that way, you need to remind yourself and take some time out, save all your mini milestones and revisit them on the days that you don't feel good enough. Second, white noise. This is something that no one told me about. I think it's very important to be careful with whose advice you buy. Every single person loves to give advice and loves to share their opinion, their perspective, but you need to be selective and you need to know who you trust. Of course, there will also be people who are constantly telling you that it's not working, because I think that's just how humans are. I think everyone's always looking for, or most people, actually, I don't want to generalize, most people are always looking for a fault or something to pinpoint that's not working. You need to pick who you listen to and who you trust throughout this entire process. And the last one, feeling tired and lazy. And very honestly, I wanted to put this there because I think as founders, we forget that this is a marathon and it is not a sprint. And that is probably something that you have to literally tell yourself every single day, I would say, or at least every week. As humans, it's very hard to stay inherently disciplined and inherently motivated. But that's the number one requirement as a founder and an entrepreneur, is you have to have that motivation in here and in here the entire time, because you're not going to get it externally. And it's very easy to just be exhausted. Frankly, I'm always exhausted. And it's very easy to give into just being lazy and just being like, I want to give up. Right? You have to find those things that are constantly motivating you, whether it's finding a buddy who's also building something, whether it's joining a community, whether it's having an accountability group. These things really, really help, especially in the early days. You need someone who's saying, hey, is this done? Or where are you at? How are you feeling? Right? Are we on track for launch? And I think something that I wrote on the bottom, just at each stage on repeat, this stays true to me every single day, no matter whether you're at the idea stage, MVP stage, launch stage, bootstrap stage, seed stage, and beyond. I think it's really, really important. Moving into launch. And this is one of my favorite, conversations to have. It's something I like to call launch day utopia, being the day that every single, me as well, I want to say, me as well, these are every single founder dreams of launch day. And for some reason, all of us tend to think that this is the day that matters the most in our career. And we think that something monumental is going to happen this day. And this is the day that we need to be geared up for. And we need to be perfect. And everything needs to be absolutely perfect for this day. What I learned now, after launching Baby Space back then launching Humm, then relaunching Humm as a B2B company, launch day does not matter at all. You need an MVP, which is, of course, I think most of you know already, a minimum viable product. You need something that is functioning, not embarrassing, but not perfect. If it's perfect, you've waited way too long to launch it. The things that actually matter, your first customer. And by this, I mean your first paying, non-friend, non-family, non-influenced customer. I remember for us at Humm, we had our first ever customer buying our B2C product, which actually then turned out to be a competitor. So I want to forget about that part. But I remember that moment of having a complete stranger buying your product. And that feeling is the most special feeling in the entire world, because you know that something is working. The next thing that I think that really matters, your first product criticism. I think for me, constructive criticism and the things that aren't working are the things I like to spend the most time on. Of course, from time to time, it's nice to notice the good parts and the things that actually do work. But to me, they should be working anyway. I like to spend a lot of time on the feedback and the critique, because I think that makes the biggest difference to the way your product evolves. So the first ever criticism is something you need to spend a lot of time on. Speak to that person one-on-one if you can, and keep an entire, I would say, a folder with all the things that went wrong with your product and how you solved them, because they end up helping how you solve problems in the future as well. And the last, not the last, but the third most important first, I would say your first team. I would say your team and the people you hire will be one of the most important things you do at your company. One, at the early stages, but at every stage. Your first employee and hiring your first employee will be a very, very special moment. And then hiring your first team will be a very, very special moment. So do it very, very carefully. Spend a lot of time before you decide. Remember to have a probation period. Remember to take your time before they move from a consultant or part-time to a full-time paid employee. Okay, so let's get into building a bootstrapped company. I'm not sure, has anyone read the book called The Lean Startup? Yeah. It's actually one of my favorite books, and it's definitely kind of influenced my way of looking at a business. I think when we talk about entrepreneurship or startups, everyone instantly says, oh my God, we have to raise money. But I view this a little bit differently. I think you should only raise money when you know your business is working and you know that it's scalable. I don't think it makes sense to raise money on an idea or raise money on something that you actually don't even know what it is. So instead, my entire kind of philosophy on being an early stage startup is to stay lean. Funnily enough, we have a principle at Humm, and this is something I like to imbibe in everyone's, just thought process at work. Even though we have raised funding, we like to pretend that we're still a bootstrapped company. And that keeps us always thinking out of the box. First, get scrappy. I think you have to have that inherent hustling, scrappy mentality where you're always looking for the most frugal, most efficient outcome in the quickest way. And I think what we tend to do as people is we look for something like quick and easy that might not actually be sustainable, that might not actually be the best outcome. Or we may say, you know what, I'll just pay for something now and, I'll see later how we make it work. Pretend like you don't have that option at all times, whether you are a bootstrap or a funded company. Keep having that kind of hustly mentality where you're looking for solutions without actually having to spend all your money or all your time on them. Next, use your network. So this was something that I would say took me a lot of time to feel comfortable with. I remember feeling too embarrassed to ask my friends to give us a review on Google or on the App Store. I remember feeling, too embarrassed to ask someone, hey, can you connect me to this investor or this other founder or this tech person? And I think as people, sometimes when we have this idea of wanting to make it on our own, using our network doesn't have to be exclusive of that. If we do have friends, if we have gone to a university like St. Andrews, I don't see why we shouldn't be able to reach out in return and go back and ask for a connect, ask for support, ask someone who's probably been in your class at St. Andrews and is a super technical person or is a product person to help you. And that gets you really far. I remember I wasted a lot of time before I was comfortable with asking people I knew for just help. As something as simple as a review, I don't know why I wasn't comfortable doing that. LinkedIn and Instagram are your best friends. This is something that I swear the second we learn how to get good at, it works wonders. They are the cheapest way and the most cost-effective way to market your product and gain traction and get strangers to use your product. I remember early days of Baby Space and Humm. I had no team. I was working with one person based out of a different city part-time as an intern. And I remember I would sit every night, obviously on minimum sleep, which I don't recommend, but messaging new moms. Back then we were a maternity company, messaging new moms and new parents to try our product for free and just come on the platform. And those were, I would probably say we ended up getting like 100, 200 people to come on our product and be our first users, get the first feedback of our product. And word of mouth, the people that loved it, started telling all of their friends. And we got more people on our platform. Same with LinkedIn. LinkedIn is your best friend for hiring your team, creating a narrative and storytelling for your product, something you can actually do for free. I'm surprised that more people don't use it effectively. Even when you think you're not good at it, because I was definitely not good at it, I still suck at it. But I definitely now use it a lot more to our company's advantage. Next, apply to grants. This is, I would say, extremely important and something that is most of the time overlooked because it's so complicated to find and to receive. There are so many grants in different countries by different agencies, by different nonprofits, different platforms that we can actually apply to, but we need to spend time and look for them. And I would say grants are probably a startup's best friend. We have never won a grant at Humm, though we've applied to many, but I know from a lot of other founder friends that it is the most helpful thing, especially when you're a bootstrapped company. It just takes a lot of time. So you need to be patient. And then that circles back to your network. Ask people. Ask people what you can apply to. Spend time on LinkedIn and see what other people are applying to and who's received what check, what cash, what grant. But you have to do the work to find it and and then you get your reward. Next, hire interns. I would say you don't need to hire your first full-time employee for a long time, especially when you're building a bootstrap company. There are a lot of people that want to work at your startup just for the experience or for a nominal amount of money, and they would do a lot more work than you think. We actually had a huge team of interns, content writing interns, product interns that really, really helped us get our product off the ground back in 2020 and back in 2021. And think about this in a more strategic manner where even if you do hire, let's say, a handful, one or even two employees, hire each of them a team of interns who can then, essentially get more hands on deck and help you more effectively. Let's talk about money. Something that I would say is a very daunting conversation for all founders because we're always tracking our monthly MIS and we're always thinking about our financial year and how no one's meeting any targets. But when you have an idea and you're starting a company, right? How are you funding this? Being the first question. For me, I had savings, a small amount of savings, but I did have savings to fund this company. I borrowed a small sum of money from my parents, which I gave them equity in this business in return. But how are you actually looking to fund it and how far can it get you? Are you making money? So if you are thinking that, let's say you're launching a business of granola bars, or you're launching a tech product, or you're launching, a SaaS company, when will this company make money, right? Is it something you think you'll make money day one? A lot of businesses do that day one, but a lot of businesses do not do that day one. And if you are making money, how far is it going to take you, right? Are you going to make enough money to get this company where you want it to be? Are you making enough money to have it as a small business where, it's self-sustaining? Are you making enough money to, hire a small team of people, but not actually the number of people you need? And if you're not making money, are you ever going to make money? Is this a business you see to, not make money for a very, very long time, like Facebook or Amazon, and then you want to figure it out? Because a lot of tech companies do that. And if you're not making money, but you think you will soon, but you need money to make money, how are you going to do that? And what scale are you thinking, right? I think a lot of times when we even think about building a startup, everyone thinks that all startups are unicorns. So I'm building a startup, I'm trying to build Facebook, I want to be, a multi-billion-dollar company. Every company and every business may not be able to do that. But are you looking to build out $100 million company? Are you looking to build a $500 million company? Are you trying to build a $20 million company, a $10 million company, and then maybe get acquired and cash out and get to your next business or next idea? Are you trying to build a small business that you then maybe want to franchise? So you need to think about these things and the scale. And that's when you actually think about financing your company. So what are financing options, right? Your first one is bootstrapping. It is extremely, extremely hard to do. And it's something that you perpetually feel paranoid about because you're always out of cash. But something I want everyone to know is that you're always going to feel like you're out of cash when you're building a startup. And you also kind of have to have that mentality. You have to feel hungry to work harder. And I would actually say the second you start thinking that it's all okay, that's when you get lazy, that's when you're not paranoid, and that's when you're not thinking fast enough. Option one, bootstrapping. If you are bootstrapping this company, what are your options? Do you have some savings? Do you have family and friends that maybe could invest in your company at an early stage? Can you crowdfund this company? Can you apply for grants? Can you fall under a CSR arm of a foundation? For example, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation that invest in startups that are doing something more impact driven. So you can think about a few of these options and spend time based on the scale you want to go. Second, raising funding. Are you raising, VC money for equity? Are you looking at debt financing? Are you looking to get a loan from a bank? And the third, self-sustaining. I would say every single company should aim to be number 3 here. We aren't at that stage as a startup, but it's definitely a dream. And you hear of, incredible companies that are able to do this at scale. There's an amazing company in India called Zerodha that's able to do this. They are a unicorn. There's another company in India called Zoho that's been able to do this, and they're a multi-billion-dollar company. So every startup, I would say the goal is, and the milestone is to reach a stage of being able to take care of yourself. I think a lot of times we think that raising funding is the achievement. To me, I think it's an obligation. And I think that's actually when the pressure really, really starts. Let's talk about timing. As entrepreneurs and as founders, I think all of us are in a rush. And I remember early days, I was always just thinking that I'm too late. I'm not 21, I'm not Mark Zuckerberg, I haven't built this company as a college student, I'm too late, I'm not going to reach my goals. We didn't raise money in our first year, my gosh, I'm too late. I'm speaking to too many investors, but they're all saying no. And I think you have to think about it as maybe you're too early to get an external person in this business, right? So one is, how much money have you put into this? How much of your effort and time have you put into this? Have you spent enough time? And is there enough money, or is it generating enough money to validate the business? Do you have PMF? I'm sure all of you know what PMF is, product market fit, a word that gives me a lot of PTSD till date because every single investor will keep asking you this word on repeat. Do you have early validation and traction? Traction and validation are extremely important in most businesses. Currently, I would say AI, crypto, these industries are really trending where a lot of investors are looking to bet on. But for most businesses, before you go and show your product, you should have something that validates, some people, a small group of people, some users that show some validation and traction to your product. Is it an MVP? Are you functioning and not something that is scalable, or are you fully launched? I think both are okay to go and speak to investors. Are you ever too late? Honestly, no, you're never really too late, but it's always important to be on time. And by that, I mean, you need to stay up to date with the market, with investors, stay in touch with people, know about every new accelerator program going out, know about different incubators going on, learn from people because you don't want to miss any opportunity. And I think even if you're not raising money, you can look at an incubator, look at an accelerator for all the support you need, because they even have tools for early stage startups. Like they have a product lab, they may have a team of developers that can help you. They do take equity, so you have to think about your equity and you have to treat it like the dearest thing to you in the world, but you have to make good choices early on. Getting fundraise ready. Just wanted to actually spend a minute and ask everyone, I can't see anyone, but you can unmute yourself. What do you think is the important part to raise money? Like, what do you think influences raising money from an investor?
David's a sound financial breakdown.
Sound financial breakdown. Okay. Anyone else? Any ideas?
Yeah, I think it's the sort of credibility of the team, the potential size of the market opportunity, and a little bit about the technology.
Got you.
But they're really backing the team, first of all.
Got it. So in my experience, I would say these are the things that impact raising money. A lot of investors, and I know a lot of their websites and a lot of VC websites talk about how they raise money at an idea stage with no product. But I think with more time, everyone now is spending a lot of time on actually seeing product, seeing the revenue, seeing the traction.
Yeah.
For me, I put product, team, and revenue all together. But I think having a really good product and demonstrating traction has the most value every single time. The investor, so the type of investor also has a lot of weightage on whether they fund your company. And by this, I mean, you need to look at the investors and see the kind of industries they fund, the kind of stages they fund. Do they look on impact investing? Do they look for diversity in investing? Are they looking for a 5-year return? Are they looking for a 7-year return? Do they look at long-term investing? And I would say that plays a huge role on whether or not they see a fit in your business. Your pitch, I would say, is only 15%. I think a lot of times we're very, very nervous for these pitches with investors, and they know we're nervous. But I don't think that they make the hugest impact on whether or not you get to the next stage. But you definitely have to be memorable. And I think that is something that is important. It needs to be simple, it needs to be short, and it needs to be something that sticks in their head. Market, I think this ties in with the investor. There are specific investors that invest in specific markets and how big this specific market is. There are some investors that look for a quick exit and they don't care too much on market size and they're looking for, a cash out at some point. But most investors look at how big that market is. You do have to pay attention to your TAM, SAM, SOM, which I know we studied in management. Warm intros. I don't think I realized how important this was before, but if you can get someone to introduce you to an investor, investors get hundreds and hundreds of emails every day, hundreds of pitch decks, hundreds of, cold reach outs. If you can maybe reach out to someone on LinkedIn who is connected to this investor, get a little scrappy, do your homework on who you're writing to, and you can get that kind of warm introduction. I think that makes a huge difference and definitely gets you a meeting. Luck. And I think this one, I like to give 10% to luck in most things. I think timing and luck are really important, but the harder you work, the luckier you get. The scrappier you are, the luckier you get. So you kind of have to stay at it, stay consistent through all of it. How to choose the right investor. So one thing before I get into it, I want to just emphasize what I've written before. I think a lot of times we tend to spend a lot of time before we even start on, oh, what will I do? Or, how will I choose? Or I only want to, write to this investor because I only want this investor. And the truth is, raising money is challenging and it is a numbers game. So you need to know that you need to first get all the term sheets before you actually think that it's time to choose between anyone. I think it's important to have enough conversations to rule people out, but it's more important to get all the offers on your table before you can sit down with a cup of tea and actually choose who you want to work with. How to pick the right investor. So the exit. Where do you see your company going in 2 years, 5 years, 7 years? How much time do you need with this business? For example, with Humm, I know that this is an 8 to 10 year journey, which is why the investors that invested in us are long-term impact investors that are looking to make an early bet on something in India. Usually, a lot of investors, their cycles are 5 to 7 years. So all of them are looking to see 5-year projections, see if are you going to hit $100 million in ARR in 5 years. That's how VCs usually invest. So do you think that this is a business you can scale to that in that much amount of time? Do you see this business maybe getting acquired because there are very specific investors that love companies like that? Or do you need more time? So you need to look at impact investors. You need to look at like slow, quiet, patient capital, we call it, and you need more time. Next, valuation versus value. I think different people care about different things when it comes to this. How attached are you to the valuation of this company? Or are you looking for a strategic partnership which adds a lot of value and can help you grow a lot faster? Are you looking for investors that are going to be very involved and care? Or are you looking for just the money? Where you can look at, syndicates, you can look at, different angel lists, and these investors are not going to be involved and you just need the money to build this out. And the next partnership, what kind of investor do you really want? What kind of partner do you want in this business? Because raising money from investors is kind of like a marriage, and it's a long journey. There are a lot of calls, there's a lot of reporting, there are a lot of conversations and tough conversations you need to have, but you're in it together till the end. So that's something you have to know. What next, right? I think just tying into what I said earlier, I think a lot of people think that the goal is to raise money, but it's actually just a means to an end, right? And you have to kind of remind yourself that the goal is to build something and to make a change and to create impact. The money or the financing is just a way to get you there. That's when you actually have to get to work. The second that money hits your bank, what's the plan? Are you on track? What's the 1-year plan, 2-year plan, 5-year plan? How are you tracking this? How are you hitting your milestones? Are you reporting? Are you networking with other investors for your next round? When are you thinking about your next round? How long is this money going to last? Are you using it effectively to meet the goal that you gave your investor? And at the end of the day, everything changes, right? Your product is going to evolve, your team's going to evolve. But how is this change, or how is the iteration of your product or your startup affecting the goal and the 5-year plan? And last, I just wanted to say that, again, it is a marathon and it's not a sprint. And I think every single person who's building something or wanting to reach their goal, they want it today. And I think something you have to tell yourself is you want something that's going to last, not something that's going to go up really fast and come crashing down. You have to just have that grit. It's very lonely. It's very isolating. You have to find people in your corner and people who get it, because most people will not understand why you're even doing this and why you're not doing a 9 to 5, or why you're spending a Friday and a Saturday night doing all the work, not sleeping, not going out, not meeting people. But you have to just persevere through that. And the second you slowly start seeing the results with that one customer, that one positive testimonial, that one the first dollar that enters your bank account, that's when you know that something is happening and the magic is happening. So with that, I'm actually going to take a pause. I know I'm over time, but I hope that I kept you interested. Happy to answer any questions that any of you have.
Thanks so much for that, Carina. I'm aware that we are literally just a couple of minutes from 2 o'clock, which is when we said we would finish the session. Yes. If you have got a question or two and you are happy to stay for a few extra minutes, we're happy to stay around and answer those questions. If you can't stay around, thank you for coming. You're still welcome to put any questions into chat, and I will try and get Carina to answer those, and we can get back to you about those after. But thanks so much, Carina. I will also say, while people are typing, we have a couple of competitions that are open at the moment. So what's the big idea? You could win £100 just for submitting your idea, and that closes on Thursday, the 10th of April. And the Startup Challenge, for those of you that are maybe a little bit further forward on your idea, and that closes on, you can win £1,000, exceptionally up to £5,000, and that closes on Wednesday, the 9th of April at 12 noon. But thanks for coming, and if there are any questions, please pop those into chat.
Okay, I'm happy to go first if you like.
Please do.
Carina, absolutely brilliant presentation, and thanks so much for that. I think it really, truly reflects the pain, the hardship, and the grit and resilience that you need just to keep going day after day. And I think that is what happens when you try and start a business. But my question was more around, as a solo entrepreneur and a female founder, how did you find the capital raising?
Do you want the diplomatic answer or the
No,
real
I want
answer?
the real one.
We want the truth.
Very honestly, it was very challenging. I think as a solo founder, before even bringing gender into it, I think it is harder to raise money as a solo founder. Most investors like to have co-founders, because I think the opinion is the more people on the founding team, they know that there will be enough people committed to this. Because it does take a lot of commitment for a long time. So I would say that's definitely one thing to consider when starting up. Very honestly, as a female founder, it's been rough. Only 2% of female-led companies get funded globally, and very honestly, it's way lower in India. So it took me a lot of time, and I think being a sensitive, emotional person, I am a people's person. So I think I had to develop thick skin really early on. And you also kind of have to know which investors are actually taking you seriously versus just trying to gain like information on a market or a company from you. And I made a lot of mistakes early on, but again, it's like, it's a distance game, right? And you kind of have to just keep doing it till it happens, and it happened. So yeah.
And just one supplementary, if I may, at the start of that process, how many potential investors were in your CRM funnel, if you like, to try and filter on down?
So the funny thing is, and I love this question, I wish I put the answer in my presentation. I went about it the wrong way a long time ago. I also started trying to raise money too early, but I thought I would go top down. So I would pick the best investors and go to them first, when I should have actually been doing the opposite, where you pick the investors you don't care too much about, you practice with them, right? And you get all the tough questions and answers done. So you're fully prepared for the ones you're actually trying to get a term sheet from. I think, honestly, I think I've probably spoken to like maybe over 60 investors in the last 2 years. And with the later few, we ended up getting a few term sheets from a few investors in the UK as well, and then here as well. But the longer, deeper conversations are the ones that exhaust you.
Yeah. Okay, brilliant. Great answers. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Tom?
Hi, Carina. Nice to meet you. Like you, I was a graduate from St Andrews University, but obviously a lot longer than you. But I've been working now with startups and university spin-outs in the commercialization process for about 27 years now. I think it was interesting that you bootstrapped for what, 3.5 years before you sought external funding. From what I see today, we tend to push startups very quickly towards the funding side, which takes an enormous amount of time and effort developing pitch decks, reaching out to venture capitalists. And to my mind, it takes away from the core objective, which should be finding customers.
Yes.
So I'm interested in that 3.5 years where you did bootstrap and you concentrated on finding customers. Is that advice you would give to most startups? Focus on finding the customers first?
Absolutely. I think, and you're absolutely right. I think everyone jumps to raising money first. You have an idea, you have a product. Oh, I'm going to apply to ABCD and, try to raise money. I would definitely recommend focusing on gaining traction and generating some amount of revenue. If this is a product that can generate revenue, early days for us, we did make some sales. We made some sales to allow us to sluggishly grow, I would say, and just kind of, month on month, just be able to just kind of survive. I didn't take a salary for 4 years with this company, actually. So that's something that I really, really, I was sure I was going to be able to just survive that. But my recommendation is 1,000,000% spend more time trying to get the traction, try to get some validation, try to make some money to show that this is working and this is fundable. And that's when you can go and say, hey, this is working. Back me. Versus going and saying, hey, I have a gorgeous pitch deck and I have this amazing idea that I just launched 42 days ago. Fund me, and I think those two, the first would always have more weightage. Yeah.
And just a follow up, did you find that having that traction, without that, would you have got the funding? Do you feel that it was the traction, the customers that actually got you the funding in the end?
I think it was definitely the validation that it's working. Very honestly, we are in a very early stage area. For example, we're a women's health focused company. Healthcare in general, especially in our country, is a moonshot. And women's health is not something that has been successfully achieved or even explored in India. So I would say the area I was in did not work to my advantage. Being a first mover, and again, I don't think I'm a first mover, but being in that group of people, it definitely comes with its own challenges. So the customers helped the most in this situation. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks, Carina. Best of luck.
Thanks, Tom. Nice meeting you.
Thank you so much. Well, if there are no more questions, I'll just say thank you so much to Carina. Lovely to see you and to catch up with you. And we look forward to hearing more from you and seeing how Humm grows over the coming years.
Thank you, Bonnie. And I'm happy to share my email with anyone if they need anything.
Of course.
So happy to always be.
Thank you so much. Have a good day.
Thanks very much.
Take care.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.